720 here, Big 550 KTRS. We wake up this morning to Verizon buying AOL for $4.4 billion. That's a sign that the world is coming to an end. Another sign that the world is coming to an end is there's a new study that America is becoming less Christian. Scott Goldberg is with us, ABC News correspondent, to talk about it. What's going on with this study?
You know, another sign, McGraw, the world is coming to an end is that REM song is the only one we have to play still after all these years every time we talk about this kind of thing.
Okay, that's a good point, too. So you've heard that song all over the country today, I'm assuming.
Everywhere. Like, there's got to be something else, but you call a song Losing My Religion anytime you have a poll like this. Well, what are you going to do? You're kind of boxed in. You're right. That's the headline here. This is coming from the Pew Research Center, that right now the number of people who identify as nothing, none of the above, they call them nuns. That's Nones, not to be confused with Catholic sisters. That's 23% of America now, up from 16% the last time they did this survey in 2007. So 23% say they are unaffiliated or atheist, agnostic. They don't believe in anything in particular. That's the largest chunk ever.
But yet 7 in 10 Americans still identified themselves as Christian, which is 70%, which is a pretty big number.
Yeah, it's still a big number, but it's down from 78% the last time they did this survey. So you are seeing a pretty significant change in that number, even though, yes, it is still big.
Yeah. Interesting how they broke out Christianity from Protestants and Catholics.
Yeah, well, you see the declines mostly among mainline Protestants and Catholics, and then in the rest of the Christian population, you don't see such dramatic changes. And you really don't have any explanations for this, McGraw, other than demographics are changing, that you have some older Christians who are frankly dying, and you have younger people, millennials, who are coming of age without any labels. They don't want to be labeled politically, and they don't want to be labeled religiously either, so they're less likely to identify with any particular faith.
Did Muslims show up at all in the poll?
Yeah, they did. They actually saw some slight gains, but it's still 0.9% of the population. Hindus also saw a little bit of a gain, but we're still talking 0.7%. So in each case, you're looking at less than 1% of the country.
How long has the Pew Research been doing studies like this?
It's been doing it for a while. I don't know when this actually began, but it's every 7 years. So it's not necessarily a big surprise that you see significant changes over that amount of time, but you get the idea from the way this has been discussed that this is, something that, the fact that we're talking about it, 70% of the country down from 78% of the country identifying as Christian, that is something that would be considered a pretty significant demographic change.
Yeah. The other thing, too, is that Protestants are now 46% of the country, if I'm reading that right. So we're less than 50% Protestant. So even though they're the majority, they're under 50%. Well,
and you typically think of the U.S. as a majority Protestant country. So yeah, that's another thing that stands out. I mean, I don't know that that's really significant or surprising necessarily, but it's just one of those milestones. Like when the Dow crosses 18,000, it's the kind of thing that makes people stop and notice.
Yeah. All right. Did the Pew Research Center ask any questions about Tom Brady at all?
Well, there are a lot of people who are questioning their Sunday activities, for sure, after this news. I mean, that is where some of the unaffiliated are going. I'm hearing that church takes the form of a gridiron in more and more homes nowadays.
What about, like, a race or anything? Are there more, as far as whites and other races, are they becoming more religious, less religious? Did they cover that at all?
No, it's really, Kelly, it's really interesting because it's an overall trend, and it's cutting across most other demographic lines, and it's happening in every region of the country, they said, not just let's say up here in the Northeast. It's in the Bible Belt too, where you're seeing these changes too. So more than anything, it just has to do with these differences among generations.
Scott Goldberg, ABC News correspondent. Thanks for checking in, Scott.
All right, guys, take care.
You got it. Mainline Protestants declined 5% to 36 million. Pew Research found that 13% of adults are also former Catholics.
Which
is not true, because once you're a Catholic, you're always a Catholic. We don't let you go. The study put the number of Catholic adults at 51 million, or just over 1/5 of the U.S. population, a drop of about 3% over 7 years. In 2007, Catholics made up 1/4 of Americans.
Wow.
Yeah, so there you go. 7:25 here, Big 550, KTRS.